Good evening, viewers. I'm Dr. Sunil Khetarpal, the Chief Transformation Officer with Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute and Research Center. At the outset, I would first like to thank Dr. Professor Manjula Batra, who is a known personality in the legal academics, for giving me an opportunity to speak on a very important topic in prevailing situation of COVID-19. Now, the topic for my webinar today is the challenges faced by hospitals and various stakeholders in the prevailing COVID epidemic. We all know that the world is facing a most unprecedented challenge affecting the health and economy of the countries. Now, healthcare is under much of stress and lot of strain. Currently, all the energies in the country are focused on controlling the transmission and reducing the morbidity and mortality due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, let me introduce you to this virus. The virus is called novel coronavirus and the disease is called COVID-19. The virus is spread through the droplet, means if somebody sneezes or coughs, and the droplet of the infected person spreads or transmits the virus to the contacts. And the droplets which land on the surfaces which we all touch before touching our own eyes and mouth or nose. This virus was first detected on 30th December in Wuhan city of China, and over more than 200 countries are affected. WHO, the World Health Organization, declared COVID-19 as a pandemic on 11th March 2020, and it has affected nearly 6.4 million, nearly 64 lakhs people worldwide till date, and globally the mortality rate is about 3,77,000 and nearly 500. So it is about 0.3 million people, or 4.5% of the total positive cases detected have died due to this disease. Now, USA is leading among all the countries in the world, followed by Brazil and Russia. So these three countries, they constitute about 43% of the total cases in the world. And India, of course, India is first in the Asia, among the Asian countries. India is leading at the top rank. And of course, China, where it started, is now in the 5th rank. And we are 7th in the world rank. Yesterday, the report revealed that from 9th position, we are pushed up to 7th position. So far, in our country, it has affected about nearly 2 lakh population, with number of deaths being nearly 5,600. That is 2.7% of deaths has happened among all the positive cases detected in our country. First case in India was detected on 30th of January 2020, and our country declared it as an epidemic on 12th of March. Now the data for the National Capital Territory of Delhi is 20,000 plus cases in total and nearly 550 deaths, which again amounts to about 2.5% of the total positive cases. Now we are in lockdown 5 period, or I must say we are in unlock 1 period. So it has been a very difficult time for all of us, and we are still facing the menace or the effects of COVID-19, and we all know the challenges. So let me come to the challenges faced by the hospitals and the various stakeholders. Now let me start with the challenges faced by different hospitals across the country. I must say that there are different challenges in the hospital. First is operational challenges. How do you manage day-to-day problems or day-to-day issues related to coronavirus? So the biggest challenge is for the hospital is to ensure the safety of their staff, for the patients and their family, their relatives, and all the stakeholders, and the safety. How do you ensure the safety of your own people? until and unless I am safe, my hospital staff are safe, we will not be able to ensure safety of other stakeholders, most importantly the patients. So wearing mask, washing hands for 20 seconds at least with soap and water, and maintaining social distance, of course, is a big challenge for the hospital. Another thing is screening of patients. So every patient who is visiting the hospital has to undergo screening for coronavirus or whether they have any flu-like symptoms. So flu-like symptoms, which are the three main symptoms, which we all know that due to COVID, if you are having the virus and if you have the symptoms, first thing is you will have a fever or you will have a cough, which is a very dry and irritating cough, and in the last stage you may have breathing difficulty. So there are various other symptoms which are not very common and which are mild. Let me tell you, 80% of the people who have this coronavirus are asymptomatic. They will not have any symptoms. They will have the virus, they will get away with the virus, then without having any disease, without having any symptoms. And another 20%, about 15% will have some symptoms and they may require some level of treatment or admission. And 5% patients will land up in ICU or become critical due to the disease and require ventilators. So another challenge which we as a hospital we have to manage is managing queue, because there is overcrowding in the hospital, especially some of the private hospitals and all the government hospitals. So how do you manage the queue? How do you maintain the social distancing in the OPD areas, in waiting areas? So social distancing norms. So these were a little difficult and a big challenge to manage. And hospitals do not have many isolation facilities. A good hospital with even 500 beds will have maybe 4 to 6 isolation beds. But because of this, you need to isolate the patient. So you need to create more beds for isolation facility, and you need to have more critical care beds or ICU beds to manage the patients. Another challenge is the quarantine of your own doctors and staff. If any patient who is detected positive, we have to go for the contact tracing, that who all have come in contact with the patient. All those who have come in contact with the patient have to be quarantined. They have to be isolated. It is either home isolation or isolation in the hospital itself. So these were also difficult to manage because the doctors and the staff will not be available during the quarantine period for the patients. Then what most of the hospitals did, they staggered the duties of their staff, and including doctors. So they were not allowed to come every day. We also, in our hospital, we made a roster of the staff. We allowed them to come on staggered duties or maybe on alternate days, so that there is less crowd in the hospital in each department, and there is there's crisscross, or the movement of the people in the hospital is much reduced. So we allowed them staggered duties. And most important part in a hospital, the most important challenge is the adherence to the infection prevention and control measures. So infection control is very important. Patient come to the hospital to become all right, not to take infection from the hospital, or there should not be any cross infection from the hospital to the patient, from the patient to the doctor, from the doctor to the patient. So most important measure which we took was to ensure that hand washing is done by all, and we our own doctors and staff, hand washing. We even have an announcement system. We have made announcements for this safety alert for hand washing every 2 hours, so that every 2 hours there is an announcement and people go and wash their hands. And use of sanitizers, it's important, and sanitization of all the areas, especially the critical care areas or vulnerable areas, and PPE kits, the personal protective equipments, which the doctors and the frontliners and the healthcare providers, they wear from right from the cap to the mask to other PPEs, gowns and shoe covers and many other hazmat kit, we call it, PPE set. So adherence to hospital infection control measures were important, and on top of that, hospitals had the challenge of facing the scarcity or the shortage of personal protective equipments, because nobody was prepared and nobody had the adequate stock to manage to use this PPE. And lastly, the challenges faced by the hospital was the training and education of staff, patients, and their family. It was an ongoing basis. We were continuously training our staff because this virus is new, and it is a new experience for all of us. Our staff and the doctors, even the doctors, the staff, the patients, their relatives, their family members, they are not aware of their protocols, many protocols. So we had to educate them and train them repeatedly. Another challenges, are clinical challenges. We say that patients who are visiting the hospital, they have to go through the flu corner or the screening section, and they may not give the correct history. Initially, we were also taking history for the, the travel abroad, foreign travel within 2 weeks. But now, of course, for last 2 months, there has been no travel. So that is not very relevant or valid now. And then we take the history of any, flu-like symptoms. So patients sometimes may not tell us the true, give us the true history, or may avoid telling us the facts because they want to consult the doctor. And sometimes the already admitted patients in the hospital, if they are having cough or fever or any other flu-like symptoms, so we need to evaluate them comprehensively and subject them for COVID test. Then and there was lack of awareness about the prevention, the diagnosis, the treatment strategies, various strategies which we are not clear, and there was no clear-cut guidelines. And there was again a challenge by the healthcare workers that for the rational and the use of appropriate PPEs, because in ICU, in operation theatre, in OPD, in different areas in the hospital, you have to use different types of personal protective equipment. So this was again a challenge. Now, how to diagnose a patient, when to do the testing. There were not enough testing labs, not enough testing facilities initially when this virus was declared pandemic. So it was again a big challenge. And whom to test, when to test, and where to send the testing. We have to take the nasopharyngeal or the oropharyngeal swab. So because the virus, the favorite place for the virus is the throat. It stays there for a few days, and then if your immunity is low, if you are vulnerable, if you have other comorbid conditions like diabetes, blood pressure, hypertension, the virus will go to your lungs. So, and ICMR is the Indian Council of Medical Research, is now given approval to few labs. Even our own hospital has got an approval to do the COVID testing. So as we grew with the COVID situation, we learned so many things, and the government is also trying to do their best to combat this disease. Now, from the treatment point of view, the clinical challenge is that there is no treatment. And we have heard of so many diseases and prevention, hydrochloroquine and many other drugs, but they are all in the testing phase. They are all under trial. So the drug therapy and even plasma therapy. So plasma therapy is when we transfuse plasma of a convalescent patient. Means if somebody who has turned positive, whose report was positive for COVID, and after turning positive, his report comes negative. After 2 negative reports, after 14 days of 2 negative reports, you can take the plasma of that patient. I can say the COVID survivor, because these plasma will have antibodies. The person has developed immunity against the disease. And if it is transfused to a very sick or critically ill patient who is on ventilator, the patient may recover. And this is under trial, but the results are very encouraging and very positive. So plasma therapy is one thing. Of course, the ultimate solution for this disease is vaccination. So vaccination for COVID-19, which is underway, and I cannot commit, I cannot say when the vaccination will come because it is still under trial. There are many thoughts, and many people are working for this vaccination. Even our Serum Institute of India, Pune, along with the Harvard University, they are working on this vaccination, and we are hoping, I'm not sure, but hoping to have this virus by end of this vaccination by end of the year. And then another stakeholders who face challenges are our healthcare workers. Healthcare workers are totally, they are anxious, they have a lot of fear, they have a lot of apprehension in their mind. And the doctors, nurses, the paramedics who are in contact with the patients, they are at a very high risk. And for them, there is psychological and physical burnout due to long working hours and dealing with COVID patients. And there's, wearing PPE is very cumbersome, because when you are wearing the personal protective equipments, you can't drink, you can't eat, you can't sneeze, you can't go to loo, you can't pee. So just imagine how that person is managing with the PPE without, attending to his daily course or routine natural calls or So this is something, probably which is, we must, really, it is kudos to our people, the frontliners who are managing day in and day out and selflessly and without, and taking risk. So this is something which they are doing a very commendable job. And then again, healthcare workers' challenges are because of lack of guidelines, protocols about treatment, what to do. So it was a big challenge. And another challenge which I think already mentioned was undergoing quarantine, because there is a lot of stigma for them, and people are not accepting them that they may transmit, they may spread the disease. So even the neighbors, or you must have heard of many such cases where the doctors or the healthcare warriors, they were shunted out from their rented accommodation by their owners. So this was something, lot of stigma. So just imagine the mental status of these people. Now, most importantly, challenges faced by patients. Patients are utterly confused. They are apprehensive. They are anxious. They are angered. They are stressed. Not only patients, the family members of the patients are equally disturbed and confused, because they are totally lack of awareness, because social media is spreading a lot of fake news. Of course, social media is important, but there are a lot of the remedial measures like desi nuskas and a lot of things which has been brought by, I think everybody in our country is a doctor, everybody is an advisor, he will give you some advice, come out with some remedy. So a lot of confusion, and there were a lot of myths of coronavirus which was perceived, the myths were perceived by the patients. And of course, another major difficulty which patient had was reaching the hospital because of public transport. There was lack of public transport, and commuting was a problem. Even they are sick, they are not able to reach the hospital. I am not talking of only corona patients. Just imagine a person who is having a heart attack, a person who is ailing from some other disease, he's having some other problem which is not related to COVID or coronavirus. Even that person was not able to reach the hospital, and there was the diagnosis was delayed, so he suffered, and there were complications. When he landed up in emergency with acute condition. So these were actually major challenges. And of course, accessibility also to the hospital was a big challenge. Which hospital, where to go? I'm not sure whether who will accept me or not if I'm having corona-like symptoms. So there was a fear in their mind, and they were not able to decide which hospital to choose and where to go. So I already mentioned that patients who were suffering from other disease were not able to reach the hospital, and they were scared to go to the hospital because they don't want to get get exposed or get mixed up with the corona patients. And now the patients with vulnerable age group. The vulnerable age group are children and elderly. So these are the high risk patients, and particularly elderly with comorbid condition. We say comorbid means when you have some associated disease, like I am already suffering from diabetes, I am a heart patient, I have hypertension, I have some other problem, thyroid or any other disease I am suffering from, some chronic ailment. So they are the most vulnerable, prone to get infection. And age, of course, the data also, the global data says that more than 50% of the patients who have died, more than 50% are above the age of 50. So age is the major factor, and people who are vulnerable. And I mentioned that there were missed opportunity of diagnosis by the patients who were initially having some problem, and they could not reach the hospital and treatment for other diseases, resulting in the increased possibility of complications and worsening of the disease. Then some patients who have to undergo surgery, and the hospitals could not take up the routine surgeries. They were only taking up those semi-elective or the emergency surgeries, because it is a risk. Conducting a surgery is risk to both patients and the doctors and the team of surgeons and anesthetists and all others who are involved in the surgery. Another challenge which patients face with the cost of treatment. The cost of treatment became high. I know how it became high, because the hospitals, they are using all PPEs. They had to resort to all the sanitization measures, so their expenses increased. But they had problem of this low footfall, low occupancy. The patients were less, so the cash flow was less. They were not able to give salary to the patients, and they were not able to give salary to their staff. So these were the challenges. So the cost, many hospitals, for them the cost was high, so the cost was passed on to the patients. So the cost of treatment also went up. To my knowledge, the average bill for a corona positive patient in a private hospital for 14 to 15 days is 7 to 8 lakhs. So you can say about 50,000 per day. This is an average figure I am quoting. So of course it varies from hospital to hospital. Of course, we have a list of the government and the private hospitals who are dedicated COVID centers where you can go for treatment of COVID. Now another challenge which the hospital we all faced were the financial challenges. As I mentioned, that the footfall in the OPD patients came down to about 20 or 30% of the footfall, and then occupancy rate of the hospital, which were earlier having 80% occupancy, which has come down to about 20 or 30%, of course. And the cash flow was less. There was dip in revenue, an issue of payment of salary to the staff, and there were a lot of cost cutting measures. And because the hospital budget increased for the infection prevention and control measures. So these were the financial challenges which hospital also had, and many hospitals even have given probably the half of the salary, and how they managed, and because they were not able to cope up with the financial burden. Now another thing is now let us come to the government strategies and what are the challenges which the hospitals faced from the government. As I mentioned, that this is a new virus. It's a new experience for us, totally new, and for everybody. Even the government did not have any clue how to manage, because they were not prepared for this unprecedented challenge, prepared to manage this epidemic. So there were a lot of guidelines, a lot of I must say the advisories which were issued by the state government, by the central government, and by ICMR, WHO. So, and these guidelines are very dynamic, and these policy documents are very dynamic, and they kept on changing. So the government kept on revising their own guidelines, and there are list of some government and private hospitals. And I must say that in Delhi, if I say the strategy, the action plan for the government is to have 30,000 COVID dedicated COVID beds in Delhi, but at present there are about 4,500 beds. And now very recently on 24th of May, Delhi government has come out with a notification that all the hospitals in Delhi which are more than 50 beds, all the nursing homes and hospitals in Delhi which are more than 50 beds will have to earmark 20% of their beds for the COVID patients. And which is of course a big challenge for the hospital, because my infrastructure is not built that way, because there are guidelines that you should have a separate entry and separate exit for such patients, because maybe my hospital is an old building, it's very congested, I may not have that kind of required infrastructure to take those COVID patients, and isolation beds and critical care. So but the government order, everyone has to comply. So some hospitals, they have even taken some time from the government to first to rectify their own problems, the infrastructural problem, the staff issues, staff problem, because many of the staff may also not be very much willing to be exposed to the COVID patient. So many staffs are even thinking of resigning, some have resigned. So these are the major challenges. And the government, one thing which is really good is that there are 11 districts in Delhi, and for every district there is a district surveillance officer who is a nodal person to deal with the to guide the people, and where to send the patient, and how to manage, if where to go for testing, or if any patient dying in the hospital. So there are various guidelines issued by the government, which these district surveillance officers who are complying with these guidelines. And one very interesting thing is that recently the government has come out with that 5-star hotels. There are 5 in number, 5-star hotels. They have been linked to the existing COVID hospitals, like Irvin Hospital or LNJP Hospital is linked to Hotel Meridian, and in South, Apollo Hospital is linked to Sofitel Surya Hotel in Friends Colony. So if there is an overflow, because what we have seen is that the government hospitals which have dedicated COVID beds, the beds are lying vacant. Hardly they are 20-30% occupancy. On the other hand, the private hospital like Gangaram, Max, Apollo, and many others which have joined now, you see they have about more than 80% occupancy, because people would like to go to private hospital who can afford, because even the insurance companies have now they are giving reimbursement to the patients for the treatment of COVID. And so these are the major challenges. But I must advise you one thing, that this lockdown, the lockdown has been a very painful thing for us. I know, because we are not very used to staying at home, of course, and especially when we are all working and going to our workplace. So the lockdown has also taught us so many things. There was there was a lot of family bonding, and you try to do your best at home, whatever you could do, and try to be productive at home, because you become redundant lying at home. But still, it has taught us to be productive and do a lot of creative things at home. Like, I will give you one example, a fisherman's story. When the fishermen they can't go for fishing, they mend their nets. So they mend them so that you can do things better way, and you can do things differently. So there is a way, how you can manage your time, even if you are at home. So very painful for those who are less than 10 years of age and more than 65. They are not even allowed to move out of the house. So this is something lockdown has taught us. And of course, my advice to the patients, my advice to the people are, now we are actually looking for a new normal, and we have to reassure ourselves Patients are very important. I know everyone must be having some or other type of patient at home. So please try to reassure them, take care of them, and see that all the safety protocols are followed. They wash their hands, they wear masks, and their immunity is good. They are, do some yoga, some exercise, and they are taking good diet. So most importantly, you have to build your immunity, so that if you have good immunity, good defense to fight against the disease, you can really conquer the disease. So if you are at home, not only this now this social distancing norms and all this safety and preventive measures is not for today because of corona. It is for future, also for future, and from times to come. I think you will have to continue with this practice. Your behavior, your attitude is going to change now. Now you will have to resort to all these good practices. So wash your hands for at least 20 seconds, or use sanitizer, which has about at least 60% of alcohol. Avoid touching your eyes, nose and mouth with unwashed hands, and practice social distancing, at least staying 6 feet away from others and avoiding close contact with people who are sick, and stay home, cover your mouth and nose, and clean and disinfect the surfaces which are touched on daily basis, and most importantly, manage stress, maintain your routine. And another thing which I would like to I think there are a few questions which I'll be answering in next few minutes. Before that, I am just going to conclude my talk here, and to say something on the economic impact, because I have talked a lot about the healthcare, the patient, the doctors, the hospitals, and other stakeholders. Now, we all know there are big shifts in the stock markets, and where share in companies are bought and sold can affect the value of pensions or individual saving account. Now, oil prices have also crashed, and the crude oil prices, which we all know, that had already been affected by a row between OPEC, the group of oil producers, and the risk of recession. Of course, we are at a very high risk of recession. If the economy is growing, that generally means more wealth and more new jobs, but it will take time. It is measured by looking at the percentage change in your gross domestic product, of course, the GDP. So another thing is the turn to technology. A lot of new innovations have taken place. A lot of new things have come. The hospitals where the patients were not able to reach, so telemedicine or the audio or video consultation was one mode or one method of consulting the doctor. Of course, there is a drawback that the doctor cannot physically examine the patient, but at least for your own patient who is in the follow-up, who have been seen by you before, can have this audio or video consultation with you. So technology is going to play a major role, and we all know let me come to the flip side of this, is the unemployment rates are now skyrocketing, with the Americas, the Europe and Central Asia being hit the hardest. And there is new evidence based on UNIDO's Industrial Production Index, the data set which provides a preliminary picture of the impact of COVID-19 so far on the manufacturing sectors of 48 countries. Another thing is there's a migrant workers movement factor in sharp spike of COVID-19 cases. We all know the story of migrant workers, how they have suffered and how they have managed to reach their places, or some have lost in between, some have died on the way. So COVID-19 will have unprecedented effect on even the migrant economy. So the effect of crisis is so much in the form of migrants coming home because they are stranded. And it is in their inability to earn as much as before, because of which they are unable to send as much money as before to their families back home. And we are expecting a fall of 20% in remittances to the South Asia region, and in particular to India. So healthcare delivery is now also going into a paradigm shift in post-COVID situation. Now the biggest challenge will be post-COVID, how are we going to manage the healthcare? Of course, the healthcare business will definitely boom. There will be more employment in the healthcare sector. Now, And we all know that healthcare was at a back seat. The healthcare budget was hardly 1.2% of the GDP, which in our country, whereas in developed countries, it is up to even 10%. So now the government, I think, will have to revisit their healthcare policies, the budget for the healthcare. They should improve on this, and healthcare should be given. Healthcare should be given the priority. I mean, should be brought to the front seat. I think. I think I must now answer the questions. I have received a fair good number of questions because I have to keep the time. Time management is also important, and keeping the time factor in mind. There is one question which says that the guidance to treat patients with less symptoms at home. I'm sure the person who has asked this question is talking about the symptoms of COVID, right? So, with less symptoms, see, it is with patient with less symptoms have to be given only symptomatic treatment and should be kept at home, because we cannot with one day, if I'm having fever since today morning or feeling lethargic, headache, cough, so same day I should not start treating or start go for the COVID test. So with mild symptoms can be treated with symptomatic treatment, like if I have fever, give crocin, give paracetamol, which is a safe drug. If I have headache, fever, body ache, so crocin will do. If I have some cough, take some steam, do some gargles. So basic measures can be taken at home, not taking very hi-fi drug or treatment. But we don't know what it is, whether it is COVID or any other common flu. So take symptomatic treatment, wait and watch for a few days. If the symptoms persists, continues for 4 days, 5 days, or the symptoms worsens, or if you find that there is another complication, your symptoms are increasing, fever is not coming down after 5 days, then you should go for COVID testing. Another question which have been asked is that is it possible for the gout to take possible, I'm so sorry, it is possible for the government to take possible measures to improve infrastructure of government hospitals? Well, it's a very, very important and a very valid question. The government is also trying to do their best to improve on the infrastructure. But I must tell you something very important, which I don't think any of this, audience who are here probably will be knowing, that 80% of the health care in our country is provided by the private players. So government contribution for healthcare is only 20%. So as such, the healthcare infrastructure is not adequate or sufficient to manage the healthcare of the country. So of course they have to now augment, and because that the public-private partnership, we say that a lot of private hospitals, they have these empanelments, the government empanelments like CGHS, for the beneficiaries of central government healthcare employees, ECHS, ESI, railways. So all these public PSUs and the government organization, they tie up with the hospitals, private hospitals, to admit their patients there. So the infrastructure is for them is not adequate. So of course government should take some possible measures to improve infrastructure. And the problem, I must say, that though we have, even if you build infrastructure, how will you manage the hospital without doctors or without staff? And our country is short of doctors and nurses. So this is again another problem. So the challenges are always there, but of course this COVID has taught us many good things, and we are learning and we are growing and we are trying to improve. Another question which I will take up now is, please tell the general public about what to look out for and what general measure to take now that the lockdown has been taken off. Lockdown or no lockdown, I don't know. It's mindset. During lockdown, I could see people intermingling, no social distancing being maintained. Now, of course, general measures are, even if the lockdown is now also, they are going to unlift the lockdown, I must say, in phased manner. So this phase, lockdown 5 is also, I would say, it is also unlock 1, I should say, because there are some relaxations in this lockdown. So slowly, they are coming back to normal, and like you see the odd even shops to be open, and some of the organizations, that they like the essential services, of course, they were allowed during lockdown, like the chemist shop and the hospitals and others. Even your Domino's and McDonald's, everything was open. So these are part of the essential services. Even I availed lot of services from McDonald's and Domino's. So I think what you have to do is you have to take general measures. Is that please wear mask. The advisory has to be continued. The same practice has to be continued, and social distancing is important. And most important thing is keep washing your hands, use sanitizer, and wear mask and social distancing. These are the basic measures. If you take, I think that is fine. And another question is home remedies for boosting immunity. I'm an allopathic doctor, so home remedies, of course. Even at my home, I see a lot of home remedies being used by my family. I think people say that to boost your immunity, you need to haldi lo or दूध में हल्दी डाल के पियो. So all these there are some beneficial effects, but of course I am not a naturopathic or not a homeopathic or not an Ayurvedic doctor. So I'll say that these are all supporting measures. They can boost your immunity. I think if it is not doing as long as it is not doing any harm to you, you can take these home remedies. Kada piyo, haldi doodh mein dal ke piyo, immunity badhao. So all these, I think, if they are not doing any harm, if your body is accepting it, go ahead. I will not say. I don't have much comment on it. And then another question is, if one patient in the building is found COVID positive, does whole building need treatment? See, treatment. The question is, why are we asking for treatment? Why should we? Even the patient himself may not need treatment, because if a patient is positive, suppose I am detected COVID positive today, but I am not having symptoms. I'm fine. I'm eating normally. I'm not having any fever, no throat pain, no cough, no other measure, no cold, so no breathing difficulty. So even I don't need treatment. Only thing is the people who are neighbors or who are in the same building have to take precautionary measure. And because the patient himself may be in quarantine, if he is in the at home, he is quarantined at home, means he is isolated at home because he does not spread. More important is that if it is not that I will get from somebody, it is also that I may also spread it to somebody else. So it is both ways. And as I mentioned that 80% in the beginning, I mentioned that 80% of the people who are having COVID positive in their COVID positive, the virus is there in the body, but they may not show any symptoms, but they are the potential carriers. They are very dangerous. They are dangerous to the society, but we don't know. And especially the young generation, there is something called herd immunity, HERD, herd immunity, where that 50% of the populations, if they are positive, it is called that many of them have developed immunity against the disease without having any symptoms. So ultimately this is going to happen, because if we talk of something during the this pandemic, during the Spanish flu in 1918, about more than 100 years ago, there was a second phase of Spanish flu which showed a lot of morbidity, and there were morbidity and mortality. 50 million people died which was the worst pandemic of the world. And 50 million, just imagine 50 million people died during that pandemic. So we are still, coronavirus is not as dangerous, and not everybody is going to be affected in the same way. Another question is that important measures or precautions to be taken by cancer patients. Well, very good question. I appreciate these cancer patients, because of the disease and because of the treatment. If patient is under chemotherapy, the immunity of the person is decreased, is reduced. We call them immunocompromised. So those patients are immunocompromised. So they have to be very careful, and we have to be extra cautious with them. They need to follow all those safety measures which I mentioned about hand washing, mask, wearing mask, social distancing. So build their immunity. That is important. And if they are vulnerable, if they are of that significant age, more than 60, 65, so don't please, until and unless there is some problem, don't take them out from home. Let them stay at home so they are safe. And they can do video consultation with the doctors. They may not go to the hospital, and there are various treatment modalities, treatment alternatives available. Like for us, I am working in a cancer hospital. Patients who were under chemotherapy, like we were giving them injectable chemotherapy. So you can give them oral chemotherapy on the advice of doctor by staying at home. And there are various other alternatives available. So even some of treatment, if it is postponed, like radiotherapy for a few days, 4 to 6 weeks, it is fine. So it is, under consultation with the doctor who is treating you. You can have video consultation and take his advice. So another question, why have some countries banned hydroxychloroquine? Chloroquine is a very famous drug, when in my child days I used to have a lot of quinine, malaria ho gaya, quinine le lo. So hydrochloroquine is of course banned because it is not recommended. It has to be used very judiciously because it has lot of adverse effects or the side effects. There are cases reported that because you having the cardiac arrest or cardiac problem, or people even dying with this drug. So only on the advice of doctor you should take hydrochloroquine. I think I have answered all the questions, and thank you very much. It was nice to talk to you on this very, very important and relevant topic. And I must say that COVID-19 or the coronavirus has taught us a lot of good things and bad things, and it has been a great teacher, I must say, COVID. And we will remember our next generation, times to come. We will talk about this pandemic, and even our during our undergraduate days in the medical college, we were told that don't read coronavirus. This is not very important. So we never used to get any question in our exams on this topic, coronavirus. So now I think the medical college, the syllabus will change. There will be a lot of stress and material on the COVID-19 because we will have enough data. Because till now we don't know, we did not have enough data on COVID. So we will have enough data, and definitely that will be incorporated in our medical syllabus. And our coming days and time to come, the medical students, they will learn more of COVID. We will be much wiser in our knowledge about this disease and this virus. Thank you very much. Have a good time. God bless you all. And once again, I would like to thank Dr. Manjula Batra and Advocate Ms. Janvi Sharma. They were fantastic. She has really, she's been managing this show, this webinar for various topics, and I was really happy when she approached me. So thank you so much. Thank you for being a nice audience. I could see many known people. I can see Narita. I can see Janvi is there. Shivankar. And all those. Father Alphonse from USA, he is also attending this webinar. He is the former principal of Rosary Senior Secondary School, where my wife is teaching. So I thank you all, and all across the world. Thank you, love you, and God bless you. Thank you, lovely audience. Yeah. ठीक था.